Alright, so we're back over here at the workbench now after our successful test run. Now it's time we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our couplers back in. Get those reinstalled so that way our shell will stay mounted to our frame. And we can go ahead and put our handrails, etc. on afterwards. So get those out of our bag. We put them in earlier, our coupler boxes and screws. And these are what I'm using for couplers here. These are KD158s. They have a little whisker on them as opposed to having the little copper spring assembly deal you got to put in the coupler box. So I prefer these. It's a little bit easier to put together to keep in the shell. So we'll go ahead and get our first coupler box here. Get our screw out of it. And you always want to be kind of careful when you're putting the couplers back in and the coupler boxes in, because if you're not, you'll end up knocking the spring out of the coupler, and that's no good when you do that, because then you got to take the coupler back out. So what I like to do here, just kind of come in, and normally you could fish them up in there. Sometimes they could be a bit of a pain in the rear end. Oh yeah, this one's going to be a bit of a challenge here. It's not going to want to go in there. Let me try getting the front one here first, because that one looked like it was, yeah, the front one's well lined up. Let me get this lift bar pushed up and out of the way a little bit. These coupler lip bars will hang up on the top of the coupler box when you're putting it in there, so you got to kind of watch when you're feeding the coupler box through there. Let's see if this one will head on into where it's got to go. Yep, there it goes. Hopefully that'll, there's it gonna get hung up. Yeah, it's gonna get hung up. So what I gotta do is get in here and lift the coupler lift bar upward, which is a bit challenging because it is glued in place presently. So we just gotta get it to go up above the ridge at the top of this coupler box, and we'll be good to go to get it in there. We might have to touch up the paint on it a little bit, but that's not a big deal. Let me see if I can get this to... It just ain't wanting to go in there now, is it? Oh, there we go. I think that did it. There we go. Oh, maybe not. But it just, Oh, come on. There we go. Just gotta get the right angle on the knife on there to get it to slip to where it's gotta go. There we go. None of that probably got recorded, but yeah, you guys could hear me talking to myself and moving the locomotive around. That'll probably have to do, unfortunately, for that. Let me get back to you after I get this back one installed, and we'll go on to putting the handrails back on. Alright, so we have our couplers reinstalled now, front and rear, so we can actually handle our locomotive by its shell again. Now what we gotta do is go ahead and start putting our handrails back in. And of course, there's a spot where I painted over the handrail hole just a little bit up here. So we want to kind of open that back up a little bit. Simple thumbtack, you can use that just to kind of open it up. That should be to where it'll pop back into where it's got to go there. Might take a little bit of persuasion, but you could always give it a little bit more of the thumbtack if you need be there. And otherwise, we just go through and just start reattaching our handrails, just pressing them into place. I think in the future I'm probably going to start using brass handrails and bending my own here down the road. I got some handrail stanchions in for some future projects, so I'll be doing those here shortly, but for this build's purpose, these will do just fine. There's nothing wrong with using these Atlas factory handrails. They aren't the fanciest thing in the world, but they do get the job done, and you know, they are a good bit more durable than your average handrail, so kind of works out to be a better thing, even though they might look a little bit clunky at times. They might look a little bit way too big. They're just a lot easier to handle, and that's kind of more important when you're operating a lot with them and handling them a lot. So for these rear ones, we do run into a bit of an issue because we can't get in there in between the plow and the back pilot area to actually put these handrails back in. So what I normally do here is I just take and I cut the little nib off the end, like so. So that way it'll fit down where it's supposed to go, but it won't be sticking out anywhere. It'll just go right down there, and I'll put a little bit of glue on each end of the handrail, so that way it'll go into place. Don't believe I covered up where these are supposed to. No, I got that right. Hoping these should pop back into where they're supposed to be at here with the ditch light being so close, but I'm not totally sure they're going to. Oh, this one I could see is about, should be about lined up there, correct? Where's that spot at? Oh, oh, I see what I did there. Those are right behind that there, aren't they? Or no, they're supposed to go right there. Huh. Well, let's see if we can't pop that one in. Since it's not wanting to go in, we'll just take our handy dandy screwdriver and we'll see if we can't widen out the edge of our hole here to get it started, and then we can just knock her home the rest of the way. Yep, that did it. I thought I'd left enough clearance there, but sometimes you never know. These things can, much like everything else, they can be a bit of a hassle at times, so let's go ahead and see if we can get this handrail fished back to where it's got to be, and I could throw a little glue on it. It might not go back in there. It might just stick out a little bit. Yeah, that's going to stick out a little bit. That ain't going to squish down in there and all. I can live with that. That's about where it's supposed to be. It's a little bit out there, but not too bad. Let's see if we can't get this other side here to go to its proper spot here. The question is, did I cover up the hole slightly? Yeah, this one I did cover up this one. I thought I did. There we go. Get that tack in there, just kind of open that up a little bit. And then this should pop into place. Yep, there we go. And that one looks like it's almost where, yeah, that looks good. I can live with that. Those are close enough. We'll live with those. Let me go ahead and get this other side on. I'll get the front thrown on, and I'll come back to you when we're, I think we'll go ahead and we'll tape up our windows next with a little painter's tape, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our cab door on, as well as our last detail parts, and we'll prepare to do some painting. So I'll be right back. Alright, so we got our front handrails on. All of our handrails are back in place. Before we do our final detailing and painting, I want to go ahead and get some tape work done here, because I want to tape up all these windows and everything for when we do some weathering here. And I'd rather go ahead and get all that done now, before I start gluing detail parts and such. While it's a little bit easier to handle it and worry about things later. So I just got some regular old painter's tape here, like you'd use if you were painting a wall and you needed to cover up a spot. And what I do is I just cut a little rectangle out like so, and then come in and try to get it as best over the window as I can. You gotta be a little bit cautious, because sometimes you can knock your windows back out, but you just, get it on there pretty good. Worst case, a little bit of the clear coat or anything from when you're doing weathering gets on it. It'll just look like a dirty part of the window, and the center will still be clean. Now, I'm not too careful with how I measure my sizes or anything for these windows. I just kind of get it close and put the tape on there. Like I said, we get a little bit along the edge. If anything, you could always come in and you cut an extra little piece or two to put on each end if you need to get the size more right, but I'm not concerned with it being an exact right perfect fit on tape. So just cover the windows all the way up. That way, for our weathering process, we won't have to worry about getting frosted over windows or anything odd like that. At least we shouldn't. Just get that to sit right there. Now the fun part's these open doors that we did here earlier, because I want to kind of make a bit of a, just a cover piece to kind of hold in there, but it's got to be something I can get out once I have a cab door glued in there. So this can be a little bit tricky, but you just take you a big piece here, and normally what I do is I'll just kind of take it and just barely get it on that inside like so. And that way when our door will be opened up, it'll be out here, and this should cover the majority of the clear coat. And, you know, worst case, you get a little bit sneak in the top, it's not the end of the world. We'll actually cut a little piece here to go on the top there and give us a little bit better coverage. But then, too, we won't be leaving any blank spots or anything. So I just do this with all the windows, and pretty much that's the process here. So let me go ahead and get the rest of these windows taped up, and I'll come back when we're going to start doing, when we go to, yeah, we'll do the fans next, then we'll do the doors last. So be back shortly. Alright, so now it's time to go ahead and install our fans on our locomotive. For these, basically all we're going to do here is we're going to take our parts we have left here from our kit from, oh, who the heck was this? Canon Companies, who these fans were from. We're just going to get these fans out of their little, off this metal sprue deal here. And now all we do is we take these and we want to turn the blades slightly. You want to do them all the same way. You don't want to turn them too much, but you want to put a little bit of an angle on them there. So you'll end up with something about like that there. And now we just need to go ahead and take our last two pieces that we painted blue earlier, remove them from our sprue, and we'll use these to assemble our fans here. Now what I got to do is I got to trim a little bit of flashing off this edge here. Don't have to get it perfect, but just get it cleaned up a little bit. Alrighty, and now we'll go ahead and we'll put our fan together here. So pretty simple. You take your one piece there, you put it through the middle of your fan blades, and you got your spacer deal that goes down here on the bottom side, I believe. I'm pretty sure it does anyway, if that wants to fit together. Maybe it doesn't want to fit together. That could make this fun. There it goes. I thought it all popped together. So you end up with this doodad here. And then all you do from there is you can either use a little CA glue or a little of your plastic welder. I'm going to go with a little CA glue, and you just get it here in the center area of the fan, right there on the top. And you drop your fan in there. And normally these will fit right down in there. Sometimes they can be a little tricky to, there it goes, right into place. So there's that first fan ready to roll right there. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is, like pretty much everything else on this series, I'm going to do one fan completely. I'll do the other two off camera. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start cutting out my grill here. Now this can be a bit tricky to get this to sit in there, because you got to be careful you don't use too much glue to hold it down, but you need enough to hold it in place. So you got to kind of be a little bit careful. What I'll do, we have it all cut out here. We have our base layer of blue on there, which you can see didn't want to stick to it too well, but that's okay. We're going to weather this anyway. So what I'll do is I get a little glue on my toothpick here, and I'll just run it around this edge like so. And then I come in with my shroud piece here, well, my cover, and I just want to get it to sit right in there where it's supposed to go. And it should sit right in place like that right there. That's what you want to see. So that's our first fan done. Now, as you can tell, you can see through to the inside. That doesn't bother me personally. You do end up with a little bit of light bleed from the number boards and such. But that doesn't really bother me near as much. I like to keep all this open just 'cause you get a better quality of sound and better volume out of it that way, out of the speaker, versus you could actually put a like a piece of styrene or something underneath these so you don't see any of that, but then you lose a bit of the volume and the sound quality. So I just leave them opened up like that, get a nice loud Locomotive, and live with it. So let me go ahead and get these other two fans installed, and then we'll move on to, hopefully our doors will be done drying here. Go ahead and show you these. I just went ahead and put the door handle and the wiper blade on them, and we could get these, we got a little bit of paint to throw on them real quick, and then we'll glue them in place. So let me go ahead and get these other two fans done, and then we'll move on to the doors. Alright, so we got our fans all put together here. I'll go ahead and show that. Fans are good. Now we're going to go ahead and get our doors put on here. So as I mentioned in the last part here, I went ahead and I already glued our, if I can get that to focus there, I already glued our door handle and our windshield wiper onto our doors. So now is the fun part, which is actually gluing the doors to the cab. Now what I've done here is I've gotten a little bit of glue on each hinge. There's 3 of them there. So that way what I do is I'll come in and I'll put this door, I just want to set it in here essentially. Just want to get it to kind of sit here. And what I want to do is I want to get these hinges to be where it glues in place at. So normally you can kind of get it to sit right about where you want it. Just got to watch. If you try to have it all the way open, sometimes the handrail will interfere with it and it won't want to sit there. So you got to kind of fiddle with it a little bit to get it to sit open all the way up. But basically that's all you do there. You just get a little bit of glue on it and just kind of get it to go where you need it to. And again, it's just a little bit of playing around with it and kind of get it where you want it and try to press it in its place, and one spot will pop out and then another spot will pop out. It's always either the top or the bottom. One side always doesn't want to stick, but eventually you'll get it right good. Like right about that, I think I can live with that. That top, I don't think that, yeah, that top is sticking out just a little bit there. I don't like that. But you gotta use those hinges as the glue points. You could also use the bottom if you really wanted to, but I prefer not to do that because I don't want the thing too glued in place. Now it looks like I'm gonna have to get a little more glue and give this a little bit more of a shot here. I'll get a little fresh glue on the hinges. Try again. Maybe this time we'll just get just a little bit on the bottom too. Kind of help shear it up a little bit. It would be a lot easier, I suppose, if you could put the hinges on the inside of the door, but seeing as the door hinges are mounted on the outside and these doors are kind of a little more stuck in a box. See that I like right there. Hopefully that's showing up. That's what I'm going for there. A nice open door where you can look right into your cab, and looks like a hot summer's day already. So let me go ahead and let's get this one here on the back side of our cab installed. Now this one's going to be a little more tricky because we don't have a ground area to glue with on this one like we have on the other side, because there's a step down from the cab. So this one's going to be a bit more of a bear to do, but we're just going to do the same process. Little glue on our hinges and away we will go. This one's just going to take a little bit more, get some kind of fuzzy thing, a little bit more fiddling around here to get it to sit in about the right spot there. This one I'm almost going to want to have right up against the cab if I can, like about like that. So that way it'll kind of hold itself in place a little bit better. Now again, you just got to be careful because if y'all remember, we did put our tape inside that door. We're gonna have to get that tape out later. So more than likely, we're gonna end up having to glue that door back on anyway. So it's more of a just we're gonna get it close for now, and that way we can weather it, and the weathering will match on the door and the rest of the locomotive. But with the full thought and idea that we're probably gonna have to come back and do a little work to it. So I'm gonna let those dry for a little bit, and then we have to go through and do some painting, and then we'll be on to decaling this locomotive. So I'll let this dry and I'll be back. Alright, so our glue's all dry now on all of our fans and our doors. Let's go ahead and start doing some of our last painting work before we start weathering on this model. What we need to do now is we need to go in, we need to paint our ditch light castings. What I have here is just a micro brush. I use these generally to kind of get as much as I can of the ditch light housing. I don't want to get that silver outer ring painted black, but I would like to get everything else in there painted black. So I just kind of come in and try to get nice and carefully in there. If I have to come back and paint that ring silver later, because I got a little carried away with the black paint, I could always do that. But I would rather try to get it as close as I could get it on the first try here, so I don't have to come back and repaint that edge, because it's always hard to paint the little edges like that, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So I'm just gonna come in here and just be rather careful with it. It would probably be easier to paint the ditch light housings before you put them on there, but the problem I run into is I try to do that and the paint will start flaking off when you're trying to actually install the lights in place later on, because you got to hold the ditch light housing with the tweezers a lot of the times, and you still have to come back in and paint it, and you end up making a bigger mess. So that one came out pretty good there. Not gonna complain. Got a little bit of a edge there. Let me see if I get that off. Grab a Q-tip here. Just use that to clean off the front of it. About like so. Yeah, that did pretty good. So we'll just go ahead and we're gonna keep on. We're gonna do this with all the ditch light housings, front and rear. And then too, while I'm here, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw a little black paint on this spot here in the front where it got a little screwed up there. Probably some residue from all the glue we put on. Or actually, you know what? That's from when I put the what the heck's there? The handrails back in. That one side was broken. I just threw a little bit of plastic welder on there. That must have discolored the glue. And too, while you're doing this, it's a good time to kind of touch up some of your spots on your plow and other areas that didn't take paint very well. But this is the first step, is doing all the black. Then we will go through and we will do all the white areas, as well as we'll do the silver tips on the MU cables, and also we will put a quick coat of the brown on the couplers, because we already did the wheels earlier. We'll do the couplers now. I'd rather do the couplers while they're mounted on the locomotive and off of it, because the paint will chip off when you try to install them. So I will come back from this once I get these 4 ditch lights done, and I start doing the white painting on all the handrails, etc. Alright, so we have all our black done now. We're all good to go, front and rear ditch lights. So now let's go ahead and let's start doing our all the white, which would be all of our handrail ends, as well as some of the grab irons. Not all of the grab irons, just some of them. This can vary from Conrail unit to Conrail unit as to what got painted white and what didn't. Certain grab irons did and some didn't. It just kind of depends on when the unit was repainted and at which shop it was repainted. Whether it's a factory EMD paint or whether it's a Juniata shop's repaint. It really can vary quite a bit. So always best to refer to prototype photos for doing painting work, like painting grab irons and handrails. And really with this one, I'm not too concerned about getting a perfect coat of paint on, because we're going to be coming back and this unit is going to be getting quite a bit of a weathering job to it. This particular locomotive, 8204, actually stayed in its original paint job from EMD in, I believe, 1977, all the way through to 99, the breakup of Conrail. So this thing really did look pretty used up by the time it made it to CSX. So we're not going to be too concerned if we don't get every little bit of paint, white paint coverage on there. We're just kind of worried about getting it good enough that when we weather it'll all blend together. So now this unit, I can't seem to find any really good shots of a direct on the side look at it, but from everything I can tell, it looks like the bottom step got white paint and the top step did. Now I don't know if those middle steps got paint wore off or what exactly the story is there, but I also noticed that these front grab irons got white paint, but it did end up wearing off, as well as our coupler lift bar got white paint here too on the end of it. So we'll go ahead and we'll just put a little bit on there. We got to paint our front handrail here. Now this is where these handrails start to look a little bit odd with these Atlas Trainman units. They generally look pretty good, but when you start putting the paint to them, that's when they kind of start to look kind of thick and chunky. But for the purposes of this build, I don't see a problem with it. Now I should have probably glued that together yesterday, but now I'm remembering I forgot to do that. So I'll probably have to throw a little glue on here when I get an opportunity to. But for the time being, we can just kind of paint this end here first, and then we'll always get a little CA glue down in there once the paint dries, and that'll hold it in place. But there's our basic idea here. We're going to do this in the front and the rear, and I'll come back when I do our coupler painting here. Alright, so we have our paint all done there with the white. Now we're going to go ahead and we got our burnt umber out right now. We're going to go ahead and do our coupler our couplers. I'm just going to come in and just slather it on there pretty good. If you use coupling magnets, be careful not to get too much paint on the spring or in the interior mechanism of the coupler area. I do not. I just unhook everything manually, so if that coupler spring gets a little bit gooped up, that's not a big deal to me. Then I just don't have to worry about it coming uncoupled on its own. So there's our front coupler. We'll do our rear one. Let's get some good old paint on there. This is just a burnt umber acrylic paint, nothing special. I like to use acrylics for all this stuff, and then I do use some, oh gosh, what's the other type of paint there? I got the thing of it sitting over here somewhere. The other kind of paint. You all know what I'm talking about, the other kind of paint. The stuff that's not acrylic for everything else. So we got that on there. Now, the next last thing we have to do here before we can do our decal work is we're going to go ahead and we're going to touch up all of our MU cables, etc. We're going to use a little bit of this A&K Interactive Extreme Metal. This is steel. I'll get this on the camera here so you guys can see what this is. AK476, it's the part number for if you want to order some. This stuff, I like using this for anything that needs to have a little bit of a glossy, like a little like metalish look to it. This stuff does pretty good. So I just get a little bit of on the end of this micro brush, and we'll come in and we just get the end of the tips of our MU cables, and we'll just put a little bit of it on there just to give them a little bit of that metalish look to them, since the end of the cables are metal. And we also want to come up here and get, if I can get in there right, we want to get these little ones up here too, because those are also little metal fittings up there towards the top of the cluster there as well. So just get in there and get a little bit of that on there. Just adds just a little bit of flavor to it. Nothing really fancy or nothing. It just kind of brings them alive a little bit more, and it keeps them, just adds another dimension to everything when you're weathering. When you have all these little finer spots like that, that's what, you know, you'll notice when you look at something that's weathered well, is the little fine spots, not the big spots. So This stuff can just be a little tricky to get to sit down because it's a bit watery. Like that just kind of blobbed in there. Not going to sweat that too much, so that'll all kind of blend together when we do the weathering. So we just want to get a little bit on each end of the hose there. Just got to keep throwing this stuff on here a little bit at a time. Get these front ones now. This is also the stuff you can use to touch up the edges of your ditch light lenses as well. Like that right there. Just throw a little bit on there. It's that nice metal color, so it'll kind of help blend all that together. Sorry for hitting the camera there, but it's kind of hard to do this stuff and have a camera set up and work in front of it. But yeah, hopefully this will be good enough that somebody will learn something from this or try to maybe build their own project. That's what I'm hoping for, you know. Somebody out there might say, hey, this knucklehead can do this, I can do this, because that's the truth, you know. Anybody could build a nice model. And as you see there, we've got a little bit of that on a coupler. Didn't want that. Let's get that coupler back painted up there. Just get a little of that going on there. There we go. Alright, so now for some of the more finer, smaller detail work we're going to do with our painting here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to, on these brake cylinders here, you'll notice there's like a little spot on the brake cylinder, and what you do is you put a little bit of that metal color on there, because that would actually be in reality where that brake cylinder is sticking out. That little rod would be sticking out of the cylinder, so I like to do that just to kind of add a little dimension to it here. No real reason other than that. And also, when I get a little bit farther into this here, I'll probably actually paint some other parts of the truck area. We'll probably do a little bit of variation on the brake shoes and stuff just to give it a little different look, you know. But it's probably not showing up on the camera very well because it's probably showing my hand. Yep, it's showing my hand. Let's try doing this down here then. Will that show up? Yeah, we got a little bit on the brake lines. It's not a big deal. Get a little black, cover that up. That's the big thing, guys. You get a little paint screw-ups there. You just touch them up with black paint. You just touch them up with the other color again. I mean, it's not a big deal. You're going to run into that trying to work in all these small spots. But anywho, that's going to be it for all of our paint work and all that stuff. So now we're sitting here with a model that is now ready for decaling. So I'm going to let this paint dry, and I'll come back later. We'll go ahead and we'll get our decal work done. Alright, so our paint's all dry. Now we're ready to go ahead and put our decals on our locomotive here. Let me see if I can move the camera here. And you can see down here we have both sets of our numbers already cut out of our decal sheet. Our locomotive designation decal, which is GP38-2. We have Selecta Power, which was another sticker that went underneath the GP38 designation. And then we have these truss decals for going with the ownership of the locomotive. Those go back here in this back area. We'll put those on last. But what I'm going to do here, as I've done with the rest of this, I'm just going to do a little bit of this, and then I'll do more off camera and show you what we've got when we're done with it here. So that way this video doesn't take forever. But the main thing with these decals, when you cut them out, you want to cut them nice and close so that you don't have any extra dead space next to them. And also, if I can get it to show up here, you want to try and leave yourself a little bit of room at the top. That way you can pick these up with tweezers and you'll be able to slide the decal off the backing paper. But what I do myself simply is I just, for these small decals like this, I dip them in Microset, which is from Microsol. Or, yeah, this is Microscale. Yeah, stuff's from Microscale. And you guys out there that do decal work, if I'm doing like a big can opener for the side of a locomotive or something, I'll dip those in water and then I'll brush Microset on here. But for just like small numbers and small decals, I'll just directly dip the decals right in there. Because normally they just do right like that and they just come right off of there. So what I'm doing right now, you guys can't see on the camera because I don't have enough room to get it in front of me here. But I have my phone, my iPad down here below me. And I'm using that to basically guesstimate about where I need to put the decals at. And what I'll do is I'll place them on there like I just did there, get them about straightened up, and then I take a piece of paper towel and I try to get in nice and close, and what that does is that'll get some of that extra microset out from underneath the decal and help it sit in place better so it doesn't move around. But basically all I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get these decals right about where they are in the actual locomotive, or as close to it as I possibly can. It can be rather difficult to get them exact, especially if you don't have a direct side shot of the locomotive, which I do not have. I'm pretty much stuck with the pictures I have of this one, because this locomotive stayed mainly in the Northeast Ohio area. As you guys can tell, it never got repainted, so it never really went around much. And there aren't very many shots of it from the late 90s, and I suspect because it was in the Cleveland area. So I only have but 2 pictures to show of this from the end of its career that really can kind of give me an idea where these decals need to go. So I'm just kind of going to use that as a guide and try to make it look as good as possible with using that as a guide. So if it looks a bit funny, I'll kind of move things to fit to where they should go. But again, I'm not exactly going to be an exact science with this. This is very much going to be a get it close, and hopefully hopefully I won't find another picture here like a couple weeks after I finish the project, 'cause that's usually the way it goes. For any of you that follow along with the Conrail and HO scale series, I actually had that happen last year with a locomotive that was in a video. One of the SW 1500s, specifically one I built last year, 9611 was the number. I could not for the life of me find a picture of that thing, of the engineer's side. I just could not find a single picture of it in the quality scheme on that side. So I ended up having to wing it with the decal just based off of other units that looked like they were repainted around the same time. And it ended up being correct. Oddly enough, about 2 weeks after I finished that, a slide actually popped up on eBay of that particular unit. Of course, repainted in the quality scheme of the engineer's side, so I ended up, of course, having to buy that then. But even still, that's normally the way this stuff works out. You finish a project and then you find another picture, so it's got to be kind of careful sliding these on here. Some of these decals will kind of start to chip and fall apart. It could be a bit frustrating. Just gotta live with it. I ain't gonna sweat it because this locomotive is gonna be extremely weathered anyway, so if the decals get a little goofed up, that's not really that big of a deal. That's kind of why I'm using my dull knife to arrange these as well. When I cut these out of the decal sheet, I'm a little bit more on the I like to use the sharper knife. That way they cut out nice and easy. But when I'm putting them on there, I don't like to use that sharp knife because it'll take a small chip out of that, like you can see right there. So, but some of these decals are a bit older, they're a bit more fragile, so they're just going to do that on their own anyway. But this unit, from what I can find, the numbers were very far forward. I don't know why. Well, because of this cab vent, but normally they don't. Normally they'll condense them together a little more rather than putting them way far forward, but for some reason that's just what this unit got. So that's what we're going with here. Now for the fun part, they're all still, fairly movable. I just want to try and arrange them so that they have decent spacing. Nothing's like too oddly spotted. These numbers look a little bit small compared to what the pictures show, but they're close enough that I can live with it. If they're not exact, they're not exact. I don't, I'm not going to sweat the small stuff because at the end of the day, this will probably be the only model of 8204 out there, unless somebody else decides to build an exact one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other side, and I'll come back to you when we do the locomotive designation decals as well as the trust information as well. Alright, so we got our decals now on our engineer's side, got them on our conductor side as well. Let's go ahead and let's do our little designation decals here next. Same process as the numbers. Just dip it in there. Now with these, what I like to do is I like to do 2 decals side to side. I'll just do the GP38 for each side, and then I'll do the select power. That way I'm not trying to pick up those little tiny decals, because that can really be a pain in the rear end to do. Just because it's so small, hard to pick up those little tiny deals there. Again, we just come in here and soak up all that extra. Now these were right underneath this latch on this door box here. And then the select power went immediately underneath that. Now that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let that dry right there. And I'll come back and I'll do the select power later. Actually, I'll probably do those rear what the heck numbers, they're the bank information. We'll do those while we let these GP38 decals just kind of soak in a bit, and that way hopefully when we put the select power decals on there they won't move. That's always kind of one of those risks you take doing these little decals really close together, is they will when you go to put the second one on they'll move a little bit, and then you're ripping your hair out trying to get them straightened out and all that, and you're trying to hold one in place with tweezers and move the other one with the knife, and just a real good time. But patience, and you could get her done. That's what the main thing is with doing something like this, is you just need a little bit of patience to work on it, and you could end up with something pretty neat when it's all said and done. So let this get good and well soaked. Go ahead and put the bank ones here and this little bit of microsol that dripped off. Let those start soaking that up. And make sure that looks like the rating. Yep, the rating's the correct way. Now it's real important too, when you're trying to slide these decals off, you want to be rather gentle with them, because that's when you'll tear them. You just want really light pressure, and you want to let them soak there for, the bigger the decal, the longer you want to let it soak before you try to pull it off the sheet there. That way you won't run the risk of tearing the decal or destroying it, which you'll have that too. That's going to happen. That's just part of the name of the game with doing a model like this. But you live and learn. You get better every single model you do. You know, that's the fun part about building these, is you really can kind of grow with the hobby as you learn more and you learn to do different things, and it's really fun to be able to do all this stuff. I still remember when I didn't know how to do any of this, and I started figuring some of it out, and started putting some lights on locomotives and doing sound, and then I kind of got more into detailing and kind of got into painting and all that stuff, and renumbering stuff, because I always thought it was cool to have locomotive numbers that you couldn't buy. That was always something I thought was neat. So kind of worked my way to where I am now, that I can do all of my own work, which is really nice. Let's go ahead and we'll get this select a power one on here. Hopefully that's freed up. Nope, not yet. Give that a little dunk here. One thing I've noticed is if you have these older micro scale sheets that are a little bit dried out or whatever it may be, they're kind of like a yellowish color as opposed to the blue. You really got to let them soak before you try to get them off the backing piece, because otherwise you'll end up tearing them. So we're just going to try and ease that off of there. There it goes. Now it's coming off there. Good. Get that right underneath the other one. I want to move. Oh, see, there we go. I knew I was going to do that. Yeah, that's about that. That's the. I'll take that. I'm going to take that, because if I keep messing with that, guys, that's going to end up even worse. Or maybe, is it straight? No, it's not straight. It's not completely straight. Let's knock that one down, move that one. Remember what I said earlier about being careful? Yeah, well, there it is. This is why. Because these little dang decals will drive you nutty. But right now, we are one decal away from being in the weathering process, and boy, am I excited to start on that. That's going to be nice to weather these. Well, weather this. I have a whole pile of stuff I've been waiting to weather until I got this done, because as of right now, I think I've been filming this for roughly 6 months, so been procrastinating just a touch, so I wanted to kind of force myself to get this done so I get this out to all y'all out there. Hopefully a few of you watch it, we'll see. If not, somebody will at some point, so. And just like that, I believe that's it right there. I don't want to mess, that's a little crooked. Right, come on, right about there. I know I'll look at that later and say it's crooked, but there we have it. There is our finished, with lighting, sound installed, our final detail painting work and detail installation work done. The only things we have to do left construction-wise to this locomotive will come after the weathering process, and that is doing our number boards. I always do that afterward, as well as adding our windshield wipers to the cab. But otherwise, guys, we are ready to go to weathering, so I will see you in the next part, which will be the weathering process for this. We'll start with a clear coat, but thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part.